Chapter 31, Arranging a Playdate. Xenoias. The sound of my phone buzzing against the kitchen counter pulled me from my thoughts as I watched Ollie pick at his breakfast. He didn't seem happy at all. Even when he had been given a day off to rest from school, he'd been quieter than usual since yesterday's incident at the hospital, and the bandage wrapped around his small hand served as a constant reminder that I had failed to protect him. I took a look at the caller ID and felt my chest tighten with something that I couldn't explain. It was Sophia. "Hello?" I answered, stepping away from the dining table so that Ollie wouldn't overhear the conversation. "Xenoias. Hi, I hope I'm not calling too early." Her voice was low and hesitant, a lot different from the confident woman I'd known years ago. "It's fine. Is everything okay? How's Riley?" I asked, worried about him. "Has he gotten better since yesterday's incident?" There was a pause before she responded slowly. "That's actually why I'm calling. Riley's been asking about Ollie since yesterday. He keeps talking about meeting your son, and I was wondering if it's okay." I found myself smiling, despite everything that had happened. "Really?" "Yes, and I was thinking, maybe it would be good for them to spend some time together? Riley doesn't have many friends, and from what I could see yesterday, Ollie seems like a sweet boy." The suggestion made perfect sense. Riley needed to have more friends, especially since he was in a new pack, adjusting to the rules here. And honestly, so did Ollie. My son has been increasingly isolated lately, even before this incident, preferring to stay home and play with his dinosaur or read a book rather than play with other children. Maybe having a friend his age would help him open up, help him process whatever was going on in his head and see that there was still a need for socializing. More importantly, it would give me a chance to keep them both away from Lumina's erratic behavior that seemed to be becoming worse day by day. "I think that's a great idea," I said, glancing back at Ollie, who was now just pushing his eggs around his plate. "When were you thinking?" "Maybe this afternoon. I could bring Riley over to your place, or we could meet at a park somewhere neutral and public so that the kids would troll comfortable. Let me talk to Ollie first, see how he's feeling with his hand and everything, but I'm sure he'd love to have a friend over." "Perfect. Just text me when you know for sure." After hanging up, I walked back to the kitchen table where Ollie was still sitting, looking small and lost in his oversized pajamas. "Hey, buddy," I said, settling down in the chair next to him, gaining his attention. "How's your hand feeling this morning?" He flexed his fingers slightly, wincing from the movement before he replied. "It still hurts a little, but not as bad as yesterday." "Good. That means it's healing properly." I reached over and gently ruffled his dark hair. "I just got a call from a friend of mine. She has a son about your age, and he was wondering if you'd like to have a playdate today." Ollie's fork fell against his plate as he looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "What friend?" "Her name is Sophia. You haven't met her yet, but she has a son, Riley. He's a little boy who looks a bit like you." The color drained from Ollie's face completely. No, what? "I don't want to see them." His voice was barely audible, which made me have to strain my ears to hear him, but there was a desperate alarm in his voice that made my heart hurt. "Why not? Riley seems like a nice kid, and his mother said he's been asking about you." Ollie shook his head vigorously, his bandaged hand clutching at his pajama shirt, ignoring the pain from such movement. It seemed that the pain in his hands was small compared to the thought of having a playdate. "I don't want to see her. The woman. She sounds like..." "Like what?" But he just shook his head again, pressing his lips together like he was afraid of what might come out if he opened them. This was exactly what I was talking about. These strange reactions that had been going on and these unexplained fears. Something was seriously wrong with my son, and I was becoming convinced each passing day that Lumina's behavior was somehow the reason for this. "Ollie, listen to me," I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm as I placed a hand on his shoulder, trying to show him comfort. "Riley is just a little boy, like you, and Sophia is a friend of mine from a long time ago. There's nothing to be scared of." "But I don't want to." "What's going on?" We both turned to see Lumina standing in the doorway, still in her robe with her hair messy from sleep. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes that showed evidence that she hadn't slept any better than I had. Daddy wants me to play with the mean lady's son, Ollie said before I could respond. Lumina's expression immediately hardened, hearing that as she turned to look at me with suspicion in her eyes. What mean lady? Sophia called, I explained, standing up to face her as I continued speaking. She suggested that Riley and Ollie have a play date. I think it's a good idea. Absolutely not. The way she shut the suggestion down without even thinking about it only confirmed my suspicion. Why not? Because that woman is dangerous, Xenois. I've been trying to tell you that, but you won't listen to me. The only dangerous person I see here is the one who's filling our son's head with paranoid delusions, I said, my patience finally snapping. Look at him, Lumina. Look at how scared he is of everything. That's not normal. He's scared because he's been hurt. Someone is using magic to... Stop. I held up a hand, cutting her off before she could launch into another one of her conspiracy theories. Just stop. I can't listen to this anymore. Chapter 32, The Ultimatum. Xenois. Ollie was watching us with wide, frightened eyes, and I realized we were doing exactly what we'd promised ourselves we wouldn't do, fighting in front of him. Ollie, go get dressed, I said, trying to control my anger, reducing my tone as I spoke gently to him. We'll continue this conversation later. He scrambled off his chair and ran toward the stairs, leaving Lumina and me alone in the kitchen with the tension that had been building up since yesterday. You can't seriously be considering letting that woman near our son, she said, her voice sounding a bit shaky from emotion. That woman has a name, Sophia, and she's an old friend who's trying to reconnect with people from her past. The fact that you can't see that, the fact that you immediately assume the worst about everyone, is exactly the problem. The problem is that you're so blinded by whatever spell she's cast on you that you can't see what's right in front of your face. I stared at her. This woman who was supposed to be my partner in raising our son, and I didn't recognize her anymore. It was almost as if she had changed, and I had no idea who this woman was. When had she become so paranoid, so angry, so quick to lash out at anyone who came near our family? Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice sounding calm despite the anger that I was feeling inside. Riley is coming over for a playdate this afternoon. Ollie needs friends, he needs normal socialization, and he needs to see that the world isn't full of monsters waiting to hurt him. Xenois, please. I'm not finished. I stepped closer to her, letting just a hint of my alpha authority leak into my voice. You're going to be civil to Sophia when she arrives. You're going to let the boys play together like normal children. And you're going to stop filling Ollie's head with your fears and paranoia. Her face went white. And if I refuse, then maybe it's time we had a serious conversation about what kind of environment is good for Ollie's growing up. The threat hung in the air between us, unspoken but perfectly clear. I watched as I saw her realize what I had meant by my words, and horror showed across her face. You wouldn't, she whispered, shaking her head slowly. I don't want to, but I will if I have to. Our son's well-being comes first, Lumina. Always. She stood there for a long moment, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, as she seemed to be having this kind of internal conversation. Finally, she spoke, her voice controlled as she spoke. Fine, but if we're doing this, it happens here, in this house, where we can both supervise. It wasn't ideal. I'd hoped to get Ollie out of the house, away from whatever toxic environment Lumina had been creating for our son. But it was a compromise I could live with for now. Ollie also needed a familiar place for his first meeting with Riley. Agreed. I'll call Sophia and let her know. She nodded her head, then turned and walked toward the stairs without another word. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sophia's number, trying to ignore the guilt that was building up in my chest. I'd just threatened my wife, the mother of my child, with taking away her son. But what choice did I have? Ollie's mysterious injuries, his increasing withdrawal, his irrational fears, something had to change in all this. Xenois? Sophia answered on the first ring. Hey, the playdate is a go for this afternoon. Would 2 o'clock work for you? That's perfect. Should I bring anything? Snacks for the boys, maybe? Just bring Riley. We'll handle everything else. Wonderful. And Xenois? Thank you for this. Riley really needs a friend right now. So does Ollie, I admitted. I'll text you our address. After hanging up, I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the remnants of Ollie's abandoned breakfast. The house felt different now, charged with intention that seemed to seep into the walls themselves. I walked to the window and looked out at our backyard, imagining Riley and Ollie playing together on the swing set I'd installed last summer. Maybe this playdate would be exactly what we all needed. Maybe seeing Ollie interact normally with another child would help Lumina realize that her fears were unfounded and baseless. Or maybe it would make everything worse. My phone buzzed with a text message, and I glanced down to see it was from work, something about a contract that needed my immediate attention. I almost laughed at the irony. Here I was, one of the most powerful alphas in the city, capable of negotiating multi-million-dollar deals and commanding respect from wolves twice my age, and I couldn't even keep my own family from falling apart. Daddy? I turned to see Ollie standing at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in jeans and a blue t-shirt, his bandaged hand held carefully against his chest. "What's up, buddy? Is Mama okay?" She seemed sad. The innocence in his question nearly broke my heart. He was worried about his mother, even though she was the source of so much confusion and fear in his young life. "Mama's just tired," I said, kneeling down to his level. "Adults sometimes have disagreements about things, but that doesn't mean we don't love each other." He nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to his 6-year-old mind. "Are you still worried about having a friend over today?" Ollie bit his lower lip, a habit he'd developed when he was trying to decide whether to tell the truth or say what he thought I wanted to hear. "A little bit," he admitted. "Can you tell me why?" He was quiet for so long that I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was so soft I had to strain to hear him. "Sometimes I have dreams about people getting hurt, and that woman reminds me about someone getting hurt in those kind of dreams." Fear shot through my veins as I searched my son's face for answers. "What kind of dreams, Ollie?" "Bad ones. In the dreams, the woman hurts the boy, and I can feel it too." I stared at my son, trying to process what he was telling me. It sounded like normal nightmares children have when their brains are trying to process something traumatic that happened to them, but he spoke like he could feel the pain from the other kid. No, I wasn't going to let Lumina's paranoia get control of my thinking too. "Dreams can feel very real sometimes," I said carefully. "But they're not real, Ollie. They can't hurt you." "But what if they can?" The question remained unanswered as I found myself unable to answer him. What if he was right? What if there was something that I could not see yet? "Tell you what," I said finally. "Let's give today a try. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or scared, you just come find me, okay? I'll be right here the whole time." He nodded, though I could still see the worry in his dark eyes as I sighed. "And Ollie, if you have any more dreams like that, I want you to tell me about them right away. Promise?" "Promise." Chapter 33, A Desperate Plan. Lumina. The moment I left Xenois alone and went back to our shared bedroom while he went to his house study to handle whatever work crisis he had to deal with, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. There was only one person who might be able to help me, and calling her meant risking everything that I had, not just my marriage, but also my life. Wolves and witches had been enemies for centuries. The old treaties were clear. Any wolf caught making deals with witches or warlocks would be stripped of their pack status and exiled, and in some cases, killed. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and I was running out of options. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I'd kept hidden for years, listed under a fake name that wouldn't raise suspicions if anyone ever looked through my phone. Carol answered on the second ring, her voice sounding familiar despite the fact that years had passed since we'd last spoken. "Lumina? Oh my God, is that really you?" "Carol, I need your help," I said without wasting time, going straight to the point, keeping my voice low as I moved toward the living room window to watch for any sign of Xenois returning. "It's about my son. Someone is using magic against him, and I think they're trying to kill him." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Carol and I had been roommates in college before I'd met Xenois, before my whole life had changed and I was groomed and forced to marry a man that I had never met, a man who had been mourning the loss of his girlfriend and love of his life, Sophia. Carol had been studying literature then, at least publicly, in the eyes of people who asked her. What she'd really been learning was how to control the magical abilities that ran in her bloodline. "Are you sure?" she asked, finally pulling me from my thoughts as I blinked my eyes, running it against my hands as I took a deep breath. "Magic against wolves is incredibly dangerous, Lumina. The kind of person who would attempt something like that. I'm sure. My son was mysteriously burned yesterday with no explanation. He was playing in the playground and was rushed to the hospital having third-degree burns. He's having visions of another child being hurt. I have no idea who the kid is or if it's who I am suspecting, and there's a woman who's been manipulating my husband, trying to get close to our family." I took a shaky breath. "I think she's planning to transfer my son's life force to her own child." Jesus. Carol's voice dropped so low that I could barely hear her next words. That's blood magic, dark magic, the kind that leaves permanent stains on everyone involved. Can you help me protect him?" Maybe. But Lumina, if I get caught anywhere near your family, if anyone realizes what I am. I know the risks. But Carol, he's my baby. I can't just stand by and watch someone hurt him." Another long pause, then a sigh. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "I need some kind of protection for him, something that will prevent any magical interference or energy transfer, something that can't be detected or removed easily." "A protection ward, that's possible, but it would require me to cast it directly on the child, and the magical signature would be strongest right after the casting. If there are any other witches in the area." "There's at least one. The woman who's doing this to my son has to have help from another witch." "Then we'll have to be very careful about timing. When do you need this done?" I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already past noon and Sophia would be arriving with Riley in less than 2 hours. "Today? This afternoon? Before?" I hesitated, not wanting to explain about the playdate and what I suspected it really was. "Before she has another chance to hurt him." "Today?" Carol's voice got higher as she went on. "Lumina, that's not enough time to prepare properly. Protection magic isn't something you just throw together. Please." I could hear the desperation in my own voice. "I'll pay whatever you want, do whatever you need. Just help me save my son." She was quiet for so long that I thought she might have hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was resigned. "I'll need an hour to gather the necessary components. Can you get me into your house without anyone seeing me?" "Yes. My husband will be distracted with work, and my son will be in his room." "And you're absolutely certain about this?" "Because once I cast a protection ward, there's no taking it back. It becomes part of the child permanently. I'm certain." "All right. I'll be there in an hour. And Lumina, this conversation never happened. If anyone ever asks, I was just an old college friend stopping by for a visit." After hanging up, I paced the living room like someone who was caged up, my mind filled with possibilities and worst-case scenarios. What if Carol was caught? What if the protection spell didn't work? What if I was wrong about everything and I was about to expose my son to even more danger? But then I thought about Ollie's burned hand, about the fear in his eyes when he described his visions and how he died in his previous life, because I was too late to stop Sophia from destroying my marriage, my family, and everything I cared about. I couldn't take any chances this time. An hour later, I heard a car pull into our driveway. Through the window, I saw a woman in jeans and a simple sweater getting out of a sedan car. Carol looked older than I remembered, but she still looked her age. 29 years was good on her. She still had that same confident walk, that same way of carrying herself that had always made me feel like everything would be okay when she was around. I opened the front door before she could knock, allowing her inside quietly. "Did anyone see you?" I asked, closing the door behind her. "I don't think so. Nice neighborhood, by the way, very suburban." "Carol, thank you for coming. I know this is dangerous for you." Chapter 34. Protection Spell. Lumina. She pulled a small leather satchel from her purse and from her bag that looked perfectly normal to anyone who didn't know what to look for. "Don't thank me yet. First, I need to see the child and make an estimate on the current magical signature he is carrying. Sometimes what looks like an attack is actually something else entirely. Probably something similar that isn't magic siphoning. I nodded my head before I left her upstairs, pausing outside Ollie's room to listen for any sounds from Xenois's study. His door was still closed, and I could hear the faint sound of him talking on the phone. He was probably dealing with problems that will keep him more tied up for now. "Ollie?" I knocked softly on his door as I continued speaking. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." "Come in, Mama." I opened the door to find Ollie sitting on his bed, a book open in his lap. He seemed to be reading. He looked up at Carol with the same suspicion look on his face that he'd been wearing more and more lately. "Ollie, this is my friend Carol. We went to school together a long time ago." Carol stepped forward and I watched her face carefully. I knew she had the ability to sense magical disturbances in people, and I was hoping she would be able to confirm what I already suspected. "Hello, Ollie," she said, her voice gentle and warm, giving him a genuine smile as she continued speaking. "Your mother has told me so much about you." "Hi," he replied quietly, but I could see him relaxing a bit and no longer looking tense from before. There was something about Carol that had always put people at ease. Carol moved closer to the bed, and I saw her taking a subtle inhale, her eyes closing briefly as she opened her magical senses, spreading it across the room, sensing for something. When she opened her eyes again, her expression was hardened as she looked worried about something. "Lumina, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" We stepped out into the hallway, and Carol closed the door behind us. "You were right," she said in a low voice, looking worried as she held onto my hand and continued speaking. "There's definitely a magical spell attached to that child. I can sense the remnants of a siphon spell, and it's recent, within the last day or two." My legs nearly gave out from under me hearing her confirm these words with her mouth. "Can you stop it?" "I can protect him from future attacks, but the connection that's already been established." She shook her head as she replied. "That's trickier. It would require me to trace the magical signature back to its source and break the connection from that end." "What about the protection ward?" "That I can definitely do. That it will prevent any new magical attacks from taking hold, and it should help strengthen his natural defenses. But it needs to be applied directly to his skin, and it will leave a permanent mark." "What kind of mark?" "Think of it like a magical tattoo. It will look like a small birthmark or freckle to anyone else who has no idea what to look for, but it will be a continuous source of protection." I didn't hesitate at all as I nodded my head. "Do it." We went back into Ollie's room, and Carol set her bag on the bedside table. "Ollie, I'm going to help your mother with something," she said, pulling out several small vials and what looked like a makeup compact. "I need you to sit very still for a few minutes, okay?" "What are you doing?" "Just giving you a little extra protection," I said, sitting on the bed next to him, ruffling his hair gently as I added, "like a good luck charm." Carol mixed several substances together in the compact, creating a paste that seemed to glitter a bit in the afternoon light. She dipped her finger into the mixture and looked at me. "Where do you want it? Somewhere hidden would be best." "His shoulder blade. Under his shirt." "Perfect. Ollie, I need you to lift up your shirt for just a moment." He looked at me uncertainly, but complied with the order, taking a deep breath. Carol placed her finger against his left shoulder blade and began tracing a small yet unique pattern. As she worked, she whispered words in a language I didn't recognize, making it seem more surreal as I felt the air tensing around us. Ollie shivered slightly, whether from the cold or the magic. I wasn't certain. "It feels warm." "That's normal," Carol assured him with a smile. "Just a few more seconds." The paste seemed to absorb into his skin, leaving behind what looked like a small, dark freckle about the size of a dime. But even as I watched, I could see it becoming like a dot which seemed normal to the human eyes and inconspicuous to anyone who wanted to hurt him. "All done," Carol said, packing her supplies back into the bag as she nodded her head. "You can put your shirt down now." "That's it?" Ollie asked, reaching back to touch the spot where she'd applied the protection ward. "That's it. And remember, this is our little secret, okay? Sometimes adults like to keep certain things private." He nodded solemnly, the kind of nod that he did when he realized that he had to keep quiet about some important things. "Can I go back to reading now?" Of course, sweetheart, I said, kissing his forehead as I beamed at him. Carol and I are just going to go downstairs and catch up. Once we were back in the living room, Carol turned to me with a serious look on her face as she said, "The ward is in place, and it should protect him from any future magical attacks, but you need to know this kind of attack won't stop." What do you mean? I mean they're going to try again, probably soon, and when they realize their magic isn't working anymore, they might switch to direct methods. A chill ran down my spine hearing these words from her mouth. You think they'll try to hurt him physically? I think you need to be very careful about who you trust and who you allow around your son, the kind of person who would use blood magic on a child. She shook her head bitterly as she added, "They're not going to be deterred by one setback. I'll be careful." Just as she was gathering her things to leave, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My heart started pounding when I realized that it was Xenois who was coming out of his study. "Carol, act natural," I whispered urgently. "You're just an old college friend." She nodded, putting on an act as Xenois appeared at the bottom of the stairs, looking tired and stressed. "Oh, hi," he said, noticing Carol for the first time. "I didn't realize we had company." "Xenois, this is Carol Morrison," I said, hoping my voice sounded casual. "We were roommates in college. She was in the area and thought she'd stop by." "Nice to meet you," Carol said, extending her hand with a warm smile as Xenois shook it gently. "Lumina's told me so much about you over the years." "Has she?" He was pleasant to her, but still had a wary look in his eyes. He was suspicious of everyone lately, especially anyone connected to me. "Well, I should get going," Carol said, checking her watch. "I have a long drive ahead of me. Lumina, it was wonderful catching up with you." "Let me walk you to your car," I said, desperate to get her out of the house before Xenois could ask too many questions. Chapter 35, Reluctant Pawn. Riley. I was sitting on my bed, locked in my bedroom by my mama as I was on timeout. I was trying to read one of the few books Mama had gotten me from the library when I heard her footsteps in the hallway. They were different today. It sounded like she was heading somewhere quickly. That usually meant she had plans, and her plans usually meant trouble for me if I failed to live up to her expectations. The lock clicked, and she pushed open my bedroom door without knocking. She never knocked anymore before she entered. "Get up, Riley. We're going out." I closed the book carefully, marking where I had stopped for the time being with a piece of paper I'd torn from a notebook. "Where are we going?" I asked carefully, as I was a bit confused. School didn't start till next week for me, and it was a weekend. "To see Alpha Xenois and his son. Remember what I told you about them? About how they're going to be our new family? How you are going to replace Ollie as his real son." My stomach twisted into knots. I remembered the restaurant yesterday, the way the big man had looked at me with such kindness before everything went wrong. I felt nauseated at the thought of that. "Why do we have to see them?" Mama sighed as she entered the room fully when she saw that I wasn't going to immediately follow her. She sat down on the edge of my bed, and for a moment her expression softened, like she was looking at something she cared about. This was the version of her that confused me the most, the one who acted like she actually cared about me. "Because, baby, this is how we make our dreams come true. Remember all those times I told you about having a real daddy? Someone who could take care of us both, give us a nice house, make sure you never have to worry about anything ever again." I nodded, though the memory of her taking care of me yesterday with the hot stove made my bandaged hand throb. "Well, Alpha Xenois is that person. He's going to be your new daddy, and his son is going to be your competition because he won't want to share his daddy with you. But for that to happen, for our dream to come true, you need to make friends with Ollie, okay? You need to make him like you so much that he wants you around all the time." "What if he doesn't like me?" The softness in her eyes disappeared, replaced by something cold and sharp as she glared at me with fury in her eyes. I guess she didn't like that question. She grabbed my hand, making me wince from the tight grip she had, as she said, "He will like you, Riley, because you're going to make sure of it. You're going to be the best friend he's ever had. You're going to be charming and funny and everything a little boy could want in a playmate." I wanted to tell her, that I didn't know how to be charming to people my age, that most kids at school thought I was weird because I was too quiet and flinched when they tried to touch me, because I always associated touch with hurt. But I'd learned not to argue with her when she got that look in her eyes. It only made things worse for me, as she would refuse to feed me again. "Okay, Mama," I said softly, nodding my head, hoping she would pat me on the head for obeying. But she didn't. "Good boy." She reached into her purse and pulled out something that looked like a bracelet, except it was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb the light around it. "I have something special for you to wear today." She held it up, and I could see that it wasn't really a bracelet at all. It was more like a band with strange symbols that was drawn on it, connected to what looked like a glove that would cover just my palm. "What is it?" "It's going to help you make friends with Ollie. You put it on your right hand, the one that got hurt yesterday, and it will make everything better." I looked down at my bandaged palm. The burn still hurt, especially when I moved my fingers, but something about the metal thing she was holding made me feel uneasy in my stomach as I shook my head slowly. "I don't want to wear it." "Riley." Her voice dropped, giving me that warning, quiet tone that meant I was about to be in serious trouble. "This isn't a choice. You're going to wear it, and you're going to use it exactly like I tell you to." She grabbed my right wrist and started unwrapping the bandage that I had managed to put on yesterday. I tried to pull away, but her grip was too strong. "Mama, it still hurts." "Hold still." She peeled away the last of the gauze, revealing the angry red mark on my palm where she'd pressed it against the hot stove. It looked worse today, all blistered and raw. The metal thing slipped over my hand like it had been made just for me. The moment it touched my skin, I felt a cold cover my whole hand as I tried to pull away from the sensation, but I couldn't. And just like that, the pain in my palm disappeared completely, like it had never been there at all. "There," she said, adjusting the band around my wrist. "Better?" I flexed my fingers experimentally, trying to see it hurt, and I couldn't feel the burn at all anymore. And when I looked at my palm, the metal glove part made it look like there had never been any injury. It doesn't hurt anymore. Chapter 36, A Dreaded Playdate. "Riley." "Good. Now listen to me very carefully, because this is important." She grabbed my shoulders and looked directly into my eyes as I watched her carefully, wondering what was important. "When you meet Ollie today, you're going to shake his hand with your right hand, the one wearing the special glove. Do you understand?" She said, holding the gloved hand. "Why?" I asked curiously, wondering what was so special shaking his hand, and even with this glove on, and why she was being so insistent on it. "Because that's how you make friends, Riley. You shake hands and introduce yourself properly. It's good manners." That seemed reasonable enough, though something about the way she said it made me think there was more to it than just being polite. What if he doesn't want to shake hands? Then you make sure he does. You be persistent. You tell him your name, you ask him his name, and you stick out your hand until he shakes it, even if it takes a while. I nodded my head slowly, although I was starting to feel sick to my stomach from the way how twisted her words sounded to my ears. The metal thing on my hand felt a lot heavier than it should, and there was something about the symbols drawn on it that hurt to look at directly. "And Riley? This is very, very important." She leaned closer, her voice dropping lower as she added, "You need to make Ollie want to be your friend. You need to make him like you so much that he asks his daddy if you can come back and play again. Can you do that for me?" I think so." "You think so?" Her grip on my shoulders tightened, causing me to inhale deeply as she said, narrowing her eyes at me in anger. "No, baby, you don't think so. You know so. Because if you don't make friends with that little boy, if you embarrass me again like you did yesterday, there are going to be consequences for your actions, and you don't want to get me angry, do you?" The threat hung in the air between us. She didn't tell me what she was going to do exactly, but the message was perfectly clear. I remembered the smell of my own skin burning, the way she'd held my hand against the hot stove while I cried and begged her to stop. "I'll make him like me," I whispered. "Good boy." She released my shoulders and stood up, smoothing down her dress before she turned to face me. "Now go get cleaned up. Wear your nice jeans and that blue shirt I bought you last month. We want to make a good impression." In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror while I brushed my teeth. The metal band around my wrist looked almost like a watch from a distance, but up close, I could see those strange symbols that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. And I wondered if it's my mere imagination, and it was just an ordinary band. I didn't understand what Mama really wanted from me, but I knew it was more than just making a friend. Everything she did had a purpose, although I was too young to understand what purpose this served. But I was smart enough to know that I was just a chess piece in whatever game she was playing. The blue shirt she'd mentioned was hanging in my closet, still with the tags on it. She'd bought it weeks ago out of the blue. Well, she did lock me up for days in the stall back in our previous house, but she never let me wear it, saying it was for special occasions. I guess today qualified for that occasion. As I got dressed, I tried to imagine what it would be like to have a real friend that wanted me for me and saw me directly. Someone who wanted to spend time with me because they actually liked me, not because their mama told them to. Someone who wouldn't flinch away from me and call me a freak when I got too quiet or said something weird that I didn't understand. Like a time I told my classmate that my mama made me not to be scared anymore by locking me in the closet stall. The girl had ran crying to the teacher, and my mum was called, and she immediately came and apologized for my imagined and dragged me out of there. That was a few days before she made us come down to this city. Maybe Ollie could be that friend, even if the circumstances were all wrong and I didn't want to replace him as his daddy's son. "Riley, are you ready?" Mama called from downstairs. "Coming!" I took one last look at myself in the mirror. The metal thing on my hand was completely hidden under the long sleeves of my shirt, and I looked like any normal 5-year-old getting ready for a play date. But I didn't feel normal. I felt like I was carrying something that could hurt that poor boy, and I couldn't tell anyone. Mama was waiting by the front door, her purse slung over her shoulder and car keys in her hand. She looked me up and down, checking to make sure everything met her standards. Perfect. Now remember what we talked about. Be charming, be friendly, make Ollie want to see you again. And don't forget about the handshake. I won't forget. And Riley? She knelt down so we were at eye level as she held me gently and said, "This is our chance for a better life, for a real family, a real home, everything we've ever wanted. Don't mess this up." Her expectations felt like a cross on my shoulders. I was barely 5 years old, and my mama was expecting me to make sure that I be a perfect version that could do everything she said. "I won't mess it up, Mama." "I know you won't, baby, because you're my good boy, aren't you?" I nodded, even though I didn't feel like a good boy. The drive to Alpha Xenois's house took about 20 minutes, and Mama spent most of it teaching me on what to say and how to act. Be polite but not too formal. Be interested in whatever Ollie wanted to play. Ask questions about his toys, his school, his life. And remember, she said as we pulled into a driveway in front of a big, beautiful house, the handshake is the most important part. Make sure you use your right hand and make sure the contact lasts at least a few seconds. I stared up at the house through the car window. It was very big and beautiful, the kind of houses that I only saw on TV that had happy families smiling all day. Are we really going to live here someday? If everything goes according to plan, yes, this could be your home, Riley. Your room could be in that house, your toys in those rooms, but only if you do your part today. She got out of the car and came around to my side, straightening my shirt and running her fingers through my hair to make sure it was perfect. Ready? I wasn't ready. I was scared and confused, and I wanted to go home and read my book. Ready, Mama. Chapter 37. The tense first meeting. Lumina. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock, and I felt my stomach twist with nausea that I was barely able to keep from throwing up on the floor. Despite the fact that I was aware and resigned that they were coming, and the fact that I had fortified Ollie to the best of my capabilities under these circumstances, I still wasn't ready for them to meet each other. If only taking my child and running away from the pack was easy, but due to how we got married to each other, Sylvia and Samuel had included it in the contract and also the bond that I can't leave the city alone or with anyone unless I have an explicit permission from my mate Xenois, which meant I was stuck in this city and I was a sitting duck. Through the living room window, I could see Sophia standing on our front porch with Riley beside her, both of them looking like they belonged here. Xenois was already moving toward the door, his face lighting up with a smile that made my heart ache. Despite everything that happened, that was still my one and only mate. When did he stop looking at me that way? Did he ever look at me that way before? That must be them, he said, glancing back at me with an expression that was part warning, part plea. I could hear the silent word. Do not make a scene. Remember what we discussed. I nodded stiffly, positioning myself where I could see everything, but hopefully stay out of the immediate line of fire. I had no intention of getting close to Sophia any more than I wanted to, and Riley was also someone I was going to stay clear of, before I get pulled into another situation where I am being seen as a monster. Ollie appeared at the top of the stairs. He was clearly drawn by the sound of the doorbell, but clearly reluctant to come down and see who it was. He glanced at me with fear in his eyes as I tried to give him a watery smile, trying to show that I was going to be there for him no matter what. Xenois opened the door, and Sophia's face immediately brightened into that radiant smile I'd come to despise. Xenois, thank you so much for having us over. She stepped into our foyer like she belonged there, her hand resting possessively on Riley's shoulder. Riley's been so excited about this playdate, haven't you, sweetheart? The little boy nodded, but I could see the tension in his small frame. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world, which only made my heart ache for him more. Whatever Sophia was putting him through, it wasn't fair to drag an innocent child into it. Ollie, Xenois called up the stairs. Come down and meet your new friend. My son descended the stairs slowly, one hand trailing along the banister. When he reached the bottom, the resemblance between the two boys was even more striking than I'd remembered. They could have been brothers. The same dark hair, the same bone structure, even similar expressions of wariness. Ollie, this is Riley, Xenois said, his voice warm with enthusiasm. And Riley, this is my son Ollie. The two boys stared at each other for a long moment, neither speaking. Riley seemed to be waiting for something, his right hand twitching at his side like he wanted to move it, but was holding himself back. Well, don't just stand there, Sophia said with a laugh that sounded forced even to my ears. Why don't you boys shake hands and introduce yourselves properly? Riley immediately extended his right hand toward Ollie, his movement so quick and automatic that it was clearly something he'd been coached to do. But Ollie took a step backward, pressing closer to the staircase. I don't want to, he said quietly. Sophia's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, and I caught a glimpse of something dark and angry in her eyes before she covered it up again. Oh, that's okay, she said, her voice still light but with an edge to it now. Some children are just shy at first. I'm sure they'll warm up to each other once they start playing. Why don't I show you boys the backyard? Xenois suggested, clearly trying to move things along. We've got a swing set and a sandbox, plus plenty of room to run around. That sounds wonderful, Sophia said. Then she turned to me with that fake smile still plastered on her face. Lumina, I was hoping we could have a chance to talk privately while the boys play. I'd really like to apologize for yesterday. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to refuse, to stay close to Ollie and make sure nothing happened to him. But I could feel Xenois watching me, waiting to see if I would make good on my promise to be civil. Of course, I said, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. Xenois led the boys toward the back door, and I watched through the kitchen window as they emerged into the backyard. Ollie was keeping his distance from Riley, but at least he wasn't hiding behind his father anymore. They really do look remarkably alike, don't they? Sophia said, coming to stand beside me at the window. Yes, they do. It's almost like they were meant to be brothers. The way she said it made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to keep watching the boys instead of looking at her. Xenois was showing them the swing set, and Riley was nodding enthusiastically at whatever he was saying. I'll just go prepare some snacks for them, I said, desperate to have something to do with my hands. That's very thoughtful of you. Sophia followed me to the kitchen counter, positioning herself so that she was between me and the back door. I really do want to apologize for yesterday, you know. I pulled ingredients for sandwiches from the refrigerator, trying to ignore her presence. There's no need. Oh, but there is. I can see how much you love your son, and I understand why you might feel threatened by Riley and me coming into your lives. I set the bread down on the counter with more force than necessary. I don't feel threatened. Chapter 38, A Taste of Your Own Medicine. Lumina, don't you? Her voice had changed, becoming softer but somehow more menacing. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're terrified of losing what you have. I started spreading peanut butter on the bread, focusing on making each stroke even, keeping my emotions in control as I replied carefully. I don't know what you're talking about. Your husband, your comfortable life, your position as the alpha's mate, all of it could disappear so easily, couldn't it? My hand stopped moving on the knife. Through the window, I could see Xenois pushing Riley on one of the swings, while Ollie sat in the sandbox, still keeping his distance, his eyes watching with suspicious and a little bit of disappointment. Even in the playground, Xenois subconsciously focused on Riley more. Especially, Sophia continued, if people started to question your role as a mother, if they started to wonder whether you were capable of providing a stable, safe environment for a child. I turned to face her, and the mask had finally dropped completely. The sweet, vulnerable woman she'd been pretending to be was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. What do you want from me? I want you to step aside gracefully. Accept that Xenois deserves better than a paranoid, unstable mate who attacks innocent women in restaurants and fills her child's head with delusions. And if I don't? Her smile was cruel as she shrugged her shoulders and replied, then I'll make sure everyone sees exactly what kind of person you really are, starting with your husband. I looked back out the window and felt my blood run cold. Riley had gotten off the swing and was walking toward Ollie in the sandbox, his right hand extended again. But this time, Ollie couldn't back away. He was sitting down, trapped. You see, Sophia said, following my eyes, children are so much more trusting than adults, so much easier to manipulate, and Riley can be very persuasive when he needs to be. Stay away from my son. Or what? You'll attack me again? In your own kitchen with your husband just outside? She laughed. Go ahead, Lumina. Show him exactly what kind of monster you really are. I watched through the window as Riley knelt down beside the sandbox, still holding out his hand. Ollie was shaking his head, pressing himself back against the wooden frame. Stop this, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Whatever you're doing to those children, stop it right now. I'm not doing anything, just letting nature take its course. Outside, Xenois was walking back toward the house, probably coming to check on the snacks. In a few seconds, he would be back inside, and whatever was happening between the boys would continue without any adult supervision. You know what I think? Sophia said, moving closer to me. I think you're going to have another one of your episodes. I think you're going to lose control, maybe try to hurt me again. And when Xenois comes inside and sees what you've done... She was right. She was backing me into a corner, forcing me to choose between protecting my son and protecting my marriage, and either choice would play right into her hands. But as I watched Riley finally grab Ollie's hand despite my son's obvious reluctance, as I saw the look of confusion and fear that crossed Ollie's face, something inside me snapped. I didn't care about the consequences anymore. I didn't care what Xenois would think or what it would cost me. All I cared about was protecting my child. You want to see a monster? I said, reaching for the electric stove and turning one of the burners to high. Let me show you what a real monster looks like. Sophia's eyes widened as she realized what I was doing, but she was too slow to react. I grabbed her wrist and yanked her forward, pressing her palm down against the heating element just as it began to glow red. Her scream was exactly like the one I'd heard in my nightmares, the sound of a child in agony. But this wasn't a child. This was the woman who had been torturing her own son, who was now trying to hurt mine. This is what you did to Riley, isn't it? I said, holding her hand against the stove as she struggled to pull away. This is how you've been controlling him, how you've been making him afraid to disobey you. "Let go of me," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "How does it feel?" I pressed her hand down harder, and the smell of burning flesh filled the kitchen. "How does it feel to be helpless, to have someone stronger than you causing you pain?" The back door slammed open, and Xenois rushed into the kitchen, his face going white when he saw what was happening. "Lumina, what the hell are you doing?" I released Sophia's hand, and she stumbled backward, cradling her burned palm against her chest. The look she gave me was pure hatred, but underneath it I could see something else. Fear. "She attacked me," Sophia sobbed, turning to Xenois with tears streaming down her face. "I was just trying to apologize, and she burned me." Xenois looked between us, his expression torn between disbelief and horror. "Lumina, please tell me this isn't what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, turning off the stove. "I burned her hand the same way she's been burning her son's hand, the same way she somehow burned Ollie's hand yesterday." "That's insane," Sophia cried. "I would never hurt Riley. He's my child. I love him." "Then explain why he flinches every time you move. Explain why he's so scared of you that he can barely speak in your presence. Explain why he keeps trying to shake hands with my son using the same hand that was mysteriously burned." I could see the doubt flickering in Xenois' eyes, and for a moment I thought he might actually believe me. But then Sophia let out another sob, and his protective instincts kicked in. "We need to get you to a hospital," he said, moving toward her. "No," she said quickly. "It's not that bad. I just want to take Riley and go home." "Sophia, you need medical attention." "Please, Xenois, I just want to leave." Through the kitchen window, I could see both boys standing in the backyard staring at the house with wide, frightened eyes. They had obviously heard Sophia screaming, and they looked terrified. "Fine," Xenois said, "but I'm driving you home and we're stopping at urgent care on the way. That's not necessary. It's not a request." Sophia nodded reluctantly, still cradling her hand. As they moved toward the back door to collect Riley, she turned to look at me one more time. "This isn't over," she said quietly, her voice filled with venom. "No," I agreed, "it's not." But as I watched them leave, Xenois' arm around Sophia's shoulders, Riley trailing behind them with his head down, I knew I had just made everything so much worse. I had lost control, just like she'd wanted me to. I had hurt her in front of my husband, proving every terrible thing she'd been saying about me. And now she had all the ammunition she needed to destroy my marriage and take my son away from me. The protection spell Carol had cast would keep Ollie safe from magical attacks, but it couldn't protect him from the very real, very human monster who was determined to tear our family apart. I sank down onto one of the kitchen chairs, my hands shaking as the adrenaline began to wear off. Outside, I could hear car doors slamming and an engine starting. "Mama?" Ollie appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face pale and confused. "What happened? Why was that lady screaming?" I looked at my son, my beautiful, innocent boy who had been through so much already, and I didn't know what to tell him. "Come here, baby," I said, opening my arms. He ran to me and I held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his hair and trying to memorize the feeling of his small body pressed against mine, because I had the terrible feeling that our time together was running out. Chapter 39, Burning Rage. Sophia. The ride to the hospital was filled with a blur of Xenois' apologetic murmurs and my own fury that I barely managed to contain. My left hand was hurting me with each heartbeat, my burned hand screaming in protest whenever the car hit a minor bump on the road. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the rage burning in my chest. That bitch had actually burned me. What audacity! She'd grabbed my hand and pressed it against that stove like I was nothing more than a disobedient child in need of punishment. The humiliation was almost worse than the pain. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," Xenois said for what felt like the 100th time, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. "I don't know what's gotten into Lumina lately. She's been different, paranoid, but I never thought she'd actually hurt someone." I bit back the urge to tell him that his precious wife had been different long before today, that she was someone who was desperate enough to do anything as long as it meant she had him in her clutches, that she was a psychotic, jealous woman who couldn't stand the thought of another female in her husband's life. Instead, I let tears flow from my eyes, playing the role of the wounded victim. "I was just trying to apologize," I whispered, cradling my injured hand against my chest. "I thought maybe we could be friends, for the children's sake." But she looked at me with such hatred. "This is all my fault," Xenois said, his voice thick with guilt and shame as he refused to look at me, rather staring in front of the wheel as he continued speaking. "I should have seen the signs. I should have gotten her help before it came to this." Perfect. He was already starting to question his loyalty to her, already beginning to see her as the unstable, dangerous woman I'd been painting her as. The burn on my hand had been worth it, just to see that doubt that was beginning to seep into his eyes. In the back seat, Riley sat in complete silence, staring out the window with that blank expression he wore when he was trying to make himself invisible and to avoid being asked questions. He'd been so close to completing his task when that woman had interfered. So close to making contact with Ollie, to begin the process that would bind the boy to us permanently. But Lumina had ruined everything with her dramatic little display. She'd actually burned me, marked me like I was some common criminal. The audacity of it made my blood boil. The emergency room was busy, filled with people who were in for minor and major emergencies alike, ranging from stubbed toe to broken bones. Xenois helped me check in. His hand was placed at my back as he explained what had happened to the nurse. "Cooking accident," he said, the lie coming out of his tongue easily. "Hot stove." The nurse looked skeptical, probably because actual cooking accidents didn't usually result in such perfect palm prints, but she didn't question it, recognizing the mayor of the city. She just handed me a clipboard and told us to wait. "I should call Lumina," Xenois said once we were seated in the waiting area, waiting for it to get to my turn. "Let her know we're here, that you're getting proper medical attention." No. The word came out sharper than I'd intended, and I had to soften my expression quickly. "Please, Xenois, I need some time to process what happened. I'm not ready to talk to her yet." He nodded, understanding, present in his eyes. "Of course, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking." Riley climbed into the chair next to Xenois, his small body curling up against the Alpha's side like he belonged there. It was perfect, really. The way Xenois' arm automatically went around my son's shoulders, the protective instinct that kicked in whenever he was near the boy. Little did he know about Riley's real origins. Perhaps someday he might, when Ollie was out of the picture. But for now, I was happy to see him being a father figure to him. "Are you okay, buddy?" Xenois asked softly. Riley nodded, but I could see the tension in his small frame. He was disappointed, probably confused about why his mission had been interrupted. The device on his hand was still active, still ready to complete its purpose, but now we'd have to wait for another opportunity. "Sophia Kingston?" A nurse called from the doorway. "That's me," I said, standing carefully. "I'll wait here with Riley," Xenois said, "unless you need me to come with you?" "No, that's fine. Riley, you stay with Xenois, okay? Mama will be right back." My son nodded, and I could see the relief in his eyes at not having to come with me. Good. Let him bond with his new father figure while I dealt with this inconvenience. The doctor was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She examined my burn carefully, cleaning it and applying a topical anesthetic that finally dulled the worst of the pain. "This is a nasty burn," she said, wrapping my hand in clean gauze. "How did you say this happened?" "Cooking accident," I repeated the lie smoothly. "I was making lunch and accidentally grabbed a hot pan handle." She didn't look convinced. "The pattern is a bit unusual for that type of accident. It looks more like contact with a flat surface. A stove burner, maybe?" I felt a flash of panic, but kept my expression neutral. I might have touched the burner when I was reaching for something. It all happened so fast. "Of course." She finished wrapping my hand and handed me a prescription for pain medication. "Keep this clean and dry. Come back if you notice any signs of infection, increased redness, swelling, discharge, that sort of thing." "Thank you, doctor." When I returned to the waiting room, I found Riley asleep against Xenois' shoulder. The Alpha was stroking my son's dark hair with such tenderness that it made my heart ache with satisfaction. This was exactly what I'd been working toward. Xenois falling in love with Riley, seeing him as the son he'd always wanted. "How is it?" Xenois asked quietly, not wanting to wake Riley. "It'll be fine. Just need to keep it bandaged for a week or so." I looked down at my sleeping son. He's exhausted. This whole situation has been very stressful for him. I can imagine. He's such a sweet kid, Sophia. You've done a wonderful job raising him. It hasn't been easy, being a single mother, but he's worth every sacrifice. Xenois's eyes softened. "You don't have to be alone anymore, you know? I meant what I said about wanting to help, about wanting to be part of your lives." Perfect. He was practically offering himself up on a silver platter. Chapter 40, Grave Punishment. Warning. Trigger warning for mild child abuse. Don't read if you feel triggered. Sophia. The drive home was quiet, except for Riley's soft breathing from the back seat. Xenois pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine, but made no move to get out of the car. "Sophia, about what happened today. I want you to know that I'm going to talk to Lumina. What she did was unacceptable, and there are going to be consequences." I felt a surge of victory in me hearing this, but I hid my smile and kept my voice soft and vulnerable. "I don't want to cause problems in your marriage, Xenois. Maybe it's better if Riley and I just step back, find somewhere else to live." "No." His response was immediate and forceful as he shook his head. "Don't let her drive you away. You and Riley belong here in this pack. I won't let anyone hurt you again." I reached over with my uninjured hand and touched his arm as I asked gently, "Are you sure? Because I get the feeling your wife sees me as some kind of threat." "Lumina is. She's been struggling lately with anxiety, paranoia. I've been trying to help her work through it, but today proved that she needs professional help." "Professional help?" "Therapy. Maybe medication. She can't keep acting like this, especially not around the children." I nodded sympathetically, but inside I was calculating about this, trying to see if I could use this to my advantage. If Xenois started pushing Lumina toward therapy, toward medication, it would only make her seem more unstable. It would be easier to paint her as an unfit mother and mate, and nobody would bat an eye when she would be taken off as Luna, and I'll fill her position nicely. "I just want what's best for everyone," I said softly, "especially the children. They shouldn't have to witness this kind of violence." "You're absolutely right." He looked back at Riley, still sleeping peacefully. "They deserve better than this." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in his head. He was questioning everything now, his marriage, his mate, his family's stability, all because of Lumina's act, which ended up painting herself as the villain. It was far better than the lies I had been making up. At least this was something that happened in front of Xenois. I was going to bear this little pain as long as it got me what I wanted. "I should get Riley inside," I said finally. "He needs to rest." "Of course." Xenois got out and came around to help me wake Riley and get him out of the car. My son was groggy and compliant, not sure of what was happening, but still allowing Xenois to carry him to the front door. "Thank you," I said as Xenois set Riley down as he was awake, rubbing his eyes looking around before realizing that we were home. "For everything today. For taking care of us." "You don't need to thank me. This is what family does for each other." "Xenois," I said, touching his arm again, "I need some time to think about everything that happened today. Some space to process. I understand completely. And I think you need to have a serious conversation with your wife about her behavior, about what she's putting the children through, about what kind of environment you want Ollie growing up in." His jaw tightened. "You're right, this can't continue. Maybe it's time to consider whether your marriage is really working anymore, whether you're both truly happy." I could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between loyalty and growing doubt. "Sophia, I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now," I said quickly. "I just think you need to be honest with yourself about what kind of future you want, what kind of family you want to build." He nodded slowly. "I'll talk to her tonight." "Good. And Xenois, whatever you decide, Riley and I will support you. We care about you too much to want to see you unhappy." He nodded his head and turned around to leave, as Riley immediately got inside the house, closing the door behind him. I waited until Xenois' car was gone before stepping inside the house as I let my anger out. "Riley Kingston, get down here now!" I yelled. my voice carrying to every corner of the room as I heard his footsteps down the stairs as he stopped at the very last step, his hands gripping on tight to the railing as he looked at me. "Where did you think you were going to?" I asked, glaring at him as he swallowed hard. "Upstairs, to my room." He mumbled the words out, sounding so small that I could barely hear him. "And did I give you permission to do so?" I asked as he shook his head. "Come to my front, right now," I said, pointing at the spot in front of me as he shook his head. "But Mama, I didn't do anything this time," he said as I stormed and grabbed him before he could run, as I pinned him to the wall. "Do you think I have time to be exchanging words with you?" I yelled as I slapped him hard across the face as he fell down crying. He shook his head as I pulled him by his shirt. "You secretly liked it, didn't you? You liked it when your mother burned my hand against that stove." I snarled at him as he shook his head, looking confused. "Mama, no, I didn't. I swear I didn't." He sobbed as I refused to listen to him. "I gave you one simple job to shake his hand. You didn't do it. How dare you?" I yelled, pulling him up the stairs as he tried to hold onto the railing, but I tugged him free from it. "I did, Mama. I shook his hand outside. I held it and all," he said, struggling to pull himself out of reach from me. "No, you didn't. If you did, then what happened?" I asked as I kicked down the guest bathroom and dragged him in, turning on the tap to fill the bathtub. "Nothing happened. Mama, please, not the water. Please, Mama. I swear, I did everything you asked me. Mama, please," he begged as I slapped him as he hit his head on the bathtub, going silent. "What did I tell you about calling me Mama in private?" I yelled at him as he covered his mouth and shook his head, tears rolling down his eyes. The bathtub was overflowing with water as I grabbed him up and forced him down inside the tub underwater as he was screaming. I pulled him out and forced him back again. His hands are gripping mine tight, his nails digging inside my skin and spilling blood. I pulled him out and left him as I turned to face him. "I don't want to hear any noise from you. Stay here. I'll come back tomorrow and remove you from here. This better be a lesson to you, Riley. Don't you dare fail me again," I said as I walked out, closing the door behind me and locking it with the key before I stormed to my bedroom. This was just the beginning, Lumina. I was going to make sure you pay for this embarrassment. Chapter 41. The Accusations. Zeno, the drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles had gone white, and I could feel my wolf pacing beneath my skin. It was also agitated by the numerous emotions that were going through me. What I had witnessed in my own kitchen kept replaying in my mind. Lumina's face filled with rage as she pressed Sophia's hand against the burning stove. I could smell the scorched hand, and I could still hear Sophia's screams of pain and terror. The way my mate had looked at me afterward, not with shame or regret, but satisfied about what she had done. There had to be an explanation somewhere. There had to be some reason why the woman I'd married, the mother of my child, had committed such an act towards Sophia. Lumina wasn't cruel. She was gentle, caring, protective of those she loved. The woman I'd seen in that kitchen couldn't be the mother of our kid who sang lullabies to Ollie every night. But I knew what I'd seen. I pulled into our driveway and sat in the car for a moment, trying to compose myself so that I wouldn't let myself blow up at her immediately. A screaming match was not going to resolve the issue. My wolf was still agitated, confused by the actions of today. Part of him wanted to defend our mate, to find some way to justify her actions. But another part was beginning to question everything I thought I knew about the woman I'd bound myself to. The house was quieter than usual when I walked in. I could hear voices coming from the study. Ollie and his tutor, Marcus, working through the weekend lessons he'd missed during our disastrous playdate. At least my son was safely occupied, and nowhere near the disaster that was waiting to happen. I found Lumina in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with her head in her hands. She looked up when I entered, and I was taken back by how haggard she appeared. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. For a moment, I felt my heart soften towards her, and I had to resist the urge to comfort her. "Lumina," I said, closing the door behind me silently, turning to face her completely. "We need to talk." She straightened her shoulders. and I saw her walls go up immediately as she narrowed her eyes at me, hardening when she saw me. I suppose we do. What happened today? In the kitchen? I need you to explain it to me because I'm having trouble understanding how the woman I married could do something so. I struggled for the right word to use in this scenario. So cruel. Cruel? Her laugh was bitter and short as she shook her head slowly. Is that what you think of me now? I don't know what to think. I saw you burn another woman's hand, Lumina. I saw you hold her against a hot stove while she screamed. What was I supposed to think? She stood up, pacing to the window overlooking our backyard. You were supposed to trust me. You were supposed to believe that I had a good reason for what I did. Then give me one. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Give me a reason that makes sense, because right now all I can see is that you attacked an innocent woman who was trying to apologize to you. Innocent? Lumina turned around to face me, her eyes filled with fury as she clenched her fist. You think Sophia Kingston is innocent? You think she's just your ex-girlfriend who happened to innocently stumble into our life with no agenda? I think she's a woman who's been through a lot, who's trying to make a better life for her son. I think she reached out to me as a result of our past friendship, and you repaid that with violence. She's been abusing Riley. Lumina's voice was filled with desperation and anger. She's been burning his hands, terrorizing him, using him as a weapon against our family. And you're so blinded by the fact that you love her still that you can't see it. I felt something inside me recoil at her words. Lumina, listen to yourself. You're talking about conspiracy theories. It's not a theory. It's real. She's been grooming that little boy to hurt Ollie, to hurt our family. The burn on his hand, the way he flinches around her, the device she made him wear. Device? I stared at her in disbelief, wondering what she was talking about. What device? On his right hand, under his sleeve. She made him wear something that looked like a glove, and she kept telling him to shake Ollie's hand with it. She's using magic, Xenois. Dark magic. Lumina, I said carefully, I think you need help. Professional help. The paranoia, the delusions. They're not delusions. She was shouting now, her composure completely shattered as she ran a hand through her hair in sheer frustration. Why won't you believe me? Why won't you protect your own son? I am protecting him. I'm trying to protect him from a mother who's becoming increasingly unstable, who's lashing out at innocent people. Innocent people? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to know what's innocent, Xenois? An innocent woman doesn't coach her 5-year-old son on how to manipulate other children. What are you talking about? She told me to step aside, to let her and Riley have you. She said if I didn't, she'd make sure that I have nothing left. Not you, and not my son. I felt something shift inside me, her words sounding delusional to me every passing second. She has done nothing wrong. You burned her, Lumina. You held her hand against a hot stove like she was a piece of meat. The same way she's been burning her own son. Chapter 42. The Call. Xenois. Even if that were true, somehow you think or assume Sophia is abusing her own child in blood. For fucks, which I don't believe it is, that doesn't give you the right to implement justice on Sophia. You're not the judge and jury, Lumina. You're supposed to be a healer, not someone who inflicts pain on others. She stared at me for a moment, her eyes searching, mine for something before I saw the light in her eyes dim a little. You don't believe me. You actually think I'm losing my mind. I think you're under a lot of stress. I clarified gently as I continued speaking. I think you're seeing threats where none exist, and I think you need help before this gets any worse. Help. She said the word like it tasted bad in her mouth as she scoffed, crossing her hands across her chest as she continued speaking in a bittered tone. You mean therapy, medication. Lock me up with the other crazy women who couldn't keep their husbands happy. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She moved closer to me, and I caught her scent, or rather, the lack of it. Was she on suppressants? What for? For the first time in our marriage, I couldn't smell her properly. Her natural scent, the one that had drawn me to her from the beginning, even when we were forced into an arranged marriage because of the situation that called for it, seemed muted somehow, distant. My wolf noticed it too, becoming even more agitated and restless as we barely could not recognize our mate. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was exactly. "You're already pulling away from me," she said softly, tilting her head slowly to the side as she added, her expression blank. "I can feel it. The bond between us is weakening, isn't it? You're questioning whether I'm worthy of being your mate." "Lumina." "Don't lie to me, Xenois. I can sense it already, and I know that I am right. You're losing faith in me, in us, and everything we stood for, despite our backstory. And she knows it. She's counting on it." Before I could respond, my phone rang. The timing couldn't have been worse, but when I saw the caller ID, I knew I had to answer. "It's my mother," I said apologetically, knowing that there was no way that I was going to ignore her call. "Of course it is." Lumina turned away from me, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold as she exhaled deeply. Pulling my eyes away from Lumina and resisting the urge to take her in my arms, I swiped to answer. "Hello, Mother." "Xenois, darling." Sylvia's voice was warm, but there was a bit of a command tone in it, the tone she used when she expected us to comply with her orders without refusing. "I'm calling to remind you about dinner tomorrow evening. 6 o'clock sharp. I trust you'll be bringing Lumina and Ollie as discussed?" I glanced at my wife, who was standing rigid by the window. "Yes, Mother. We'll be there." "Wonderful. I do hope Lumina is feeling well. She seemed rather fragile when we spoke last week. I'd hate for her to use illness as an excuse to avoid family obligations." The barb was subtle but present. My mother had never been particularly fond of Lumina, and she'd made sure that I knew it, especially after the death of my sister, where Lumina was still a suspect in her eyes. "She's fine, Mother. We'll both be there." "Good. And Xenois, I hope you're not letting anyone fill your head with nonsense about what it means to be filial and loyal to one person. Sometimes the heart wants what it wants, regardless of who is in the way." I felt a chill run down my spine as I narrowed my eyes in confusion and a bit of fear. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing specific, darling. Just that life is short, and we should all pursue happiness where we find it. I'll see you tomorrow." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in confusion. Had she somehow heard about Sophia? About what happened today? "Your mother's subtle as always," Lumina said without turning around. "Let me guess, she reminded you that being your wife was just a mere duty, and that you shouldn't let duty keep you from pursuing happiness with someone else." "How did you—" "Because she's been saying the same thing to me for years, telling me that I should step aside gracefully if you ever find someone more suitable to take care of you, someone that you can love, someone who could give you what you really need." I felt sick. "Lumina, that's not. Isn't it? Be honest with yourself, Xenois. Isn't part of you relieved to have an excuse to question our marriage? Isn't part of you already imagining what it would be like to be with someone else? Someone who isn't me?" She finally turned to face me, and I saw tears streaming down her cheeks. Someone like Sophia Kingston and her charming son Riley. Someone who could slide into my place so easily and make you forget you ever had to settle for me. "I never settled for you." "Didn't you? Then why does it feel like you're looking for reasons to leave me? Why does it feel like you're already gone?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew she was right. Something had changed between us, and I had no idea when it started or how it took root. The scent thing was getting worse. Standing this close to her, I could barely detect her at all. It was like she was fading away, becoming less present in my life. "I need time to think," I said finally, as I didn't want this to lead to questions that I had no idea how to answer. About everything that happened today, about what it means for our family. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Take all the time you need. But remember, Xenois, while you're thinking, she's planning, and when you finally figure out that Sophia is the monster in this situation, it may be too late to save any of us." With that, she walked past me toward the door. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. I think we both need some space." After she left, I sat down on the chair that was by our bedroom window and stared out at the backyard where, just hours ago, I watched two little boys play together. Everything seemed easy then. Now I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and each choice I make may end up with me falling with no way out. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sophia. "Thank you for taking care of us today. I hope you're okay. We're here if you need anything." I stared at the message for a long time, and despite everything that had happened, I felt happy seeing her text message. Maybe Lumina was right about our bond. Maybe I was already gone. Chapter 43, An Unexpected Ally. Sophia. I was sitting in my living room bored out of my mind. My day had been ruined by that Lumina, as I did intend on spending some time with her mate, but due to the situation, I was back home, nursing a glass of wine and admiring the professional bandaging on my burned hand, when my phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I immediately reached for it, thinking that it is Xenois who was calling to check up on me as usual. But the caller ID made me pause. It was Sylvia Blackwood instead. Xenois' mother hadn't spoken to me since I'd left Silver Creek all those years ago, and I certainly hadn't expected to hear from her now. I let it ring twice more, composing myself before answering with surprise present in my voice. "Mrs. Blackwood, this is unexpected." "Sophia, darling." Her voice was exactly as I remembered it, sounding cultured and confident in a way that showed that she was definitely used to getting what she wanted from people. "I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the PAC registry. I heard through the grapevine that you've returned to Silver Creek City." "Yes, I have. Riley and I moved back a few weeks ago." I kept my tone neutral, not quite sure where this conversation was headed, and I wanted to observe it first. "Riley, that's your son, isn't it? He must be around Ollie's age now." "He's 5, yes. They share the same birthday." There was a pause, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. Sylvia Blackwood had always been a master strategist at heart, and definitely someone who thought several moves ahead in every situation. Whatever she wanted, this call wasn't a mere check-in on me. "I'm sure adjusting to life here again has been challenging," she continued smoothly. "Especially after everything you've been through. I was so sorry to hear about your mate's passing." I closed my eyes, letting genuine pain enter my voice as I needed to sell the act and have her be some sympathetic towards me. "Thank you. It's been difficult, raising Riley on my own, but we're managing. I'm sure you are. You always were stronger than you looked." Her tone got warmer and more softer, and I recognized the shift. She was moving into her game mode now. "Tell me, have you and Xenois had a chance to reconnect since your return?" The question seemed innocent enough, but I knew better than to assume it was. Sylvia Blackwood never asked innocent questions. "We have, actually. He's been very kind, helping us settle in. Riley has even had a few playdates with Oliver." "Has he now? How wonderful. I imagine the boys get along well." "They do. Riley adores Oliver, and from what I can tell, the feeling is mutual." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice changed, getting hard as she stated bluntly. "Sophia, I'm going to be direct with you as I always have been. I think you and I should have a conversation, face to face." My heartbeat got erratic a bit, hearing this, but I kept my voice steady. "About what?" "About the future. About what's best for our sons, about certain situations that need addressing." She was being deliberately unclear about what she wanted, but the implication was clear. This was about Lumina, about the fact that her son's marriage might not be holding on for long. "Mrs. Blackwood, I'm not sure I understand." "Of course you do, dear. You were always too intelligent to play dumb convincingly." Her laugh was sharp but not unkind. "Let me be clearer. I'm hosting a family dinner this Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. I'd like you and Riley to join us." I nearly dropped my wine glass out of surprise as I tried to process her words. "A family dinner?" She was inviting us to a family dinner? That's very kind of you, but I wouldn't want to impose." "Nonsense. You're not imposing. You're practically family already, considering how close our sons have become." Her voice took on that hard tone again as she continued speaking. "Besides, I think it's time together and discuss what's best for the children. Don't you agree?" The children. She kept coming back to the children, like there was something significant that I was missing and couldn't piece it together. And the way she said, "all sat down together," she meant Lumina would be there too. This wasn't just a mere invite, trying to be nice and include me in some family dinner to feel among and happy. This was Sylvia Blackwood planning something, and I had a feeling I knew exactly what it was. Mrs. Blackwood, if this is about what happened today— Oh, you mean the incident in the kitchen? Yes, I heard about that. Terrible business, absolutely unacceptable behavior from someone who's supposed to be setting an example for the children. My breath caught. She'd already heard about Lumina burning me? News traveled fast in Silver Creek, but this felt different, more personal. I'm sorry, I don't want to cause any problems in your family. Darling, you're not causing problems. You're simply existing, and if that threatens certain people, well, that says more about them than it does about you. The venom in her voice when she said certain people was unmistakable. She despised Lumina. I'd always known there was tension between them, but this level of animosity was unexpected and incredibly useful. I appreciate your kindness, Mrs. Blackwood, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to attend a family dinner. Lumina and we don't exactly see eye to eye. No, I imagine you don't, particularly after she attacked you in her own kitchen like some common street thug. She spat with venom full in her mouth. Chapter 44. The invite. Sophia. I winced partially from genuine pain and the rest for dramatic effect to sell it even more, so that Sylvia would hate Lumina more, making it easier to get rid of her faster. To be very honest with you, it was frightening when it happened to me. I've never experienced anything like that before, the hatred in her eyes. I trailed off, my voice wobbly a bit, as Sylvia picked up from where I had dropped off. I can only imagine the horror that you went through. Tell me, Sophia, do you feel safe at all? With her living so close, knowing she's capable of such violence and that she can still snap and decide to commit more atrocities? It was a loaded question, and we both knew it. There was no hiding it now. She was giving me an opening to raise complaints about Lumina's stability, her fitness as a mother and mate. I try not to think about it. For Riley's sake, I have to believe that was a once-and-done incident. But you don't believe that, do you? She asked, certainty in her tone as I inhaled deeply. I hesitated, as if fighting with my conscience about this, as I continued speaking. I'm worried about Oliver. If she could do that to me, a grown woman, what might she do to a child who displeases her somehow? Exactly my concern. Her voice was filled with satisfaction. Which is why I think Saturday's dinner supposed to happen today is more important than ever. We need to have a clear discussion about the future, about what kind of environment we want our grandsons growing up in. Grandsons. Plural. She was already thinking of Riley as family, as her grandson. This was better than I could have possibly hoped for. I said to myself, trying to keep my happiness bottled up for now. If you truly think it would be helpful. I do. In fact, I think it's essential. Those boys deserve stability, Sophia. They deserve to grow up in a home where they feel safe and loved, where they're not walking on eggshells around an unstable parental figure. You're right, of course. Riley has been through so much already, losing his father. The last thing he needs is more chaos in his life. Precisely, which is why I think it's time we adults started making some difficult but necessary decisions. My heart was racing now, but I kept my voice calm and concerned. What kind of decisions? The kind that prioritizes the children's well-being above all else. The kind that recognizes when a situation has become too toxic for children to live in and then change to a new place. She was talking about removing Lumina from the picture. Not just from Xenois's life, but from Oliver's as well. This was far more than I'd dared to hope for when I'd returned to Silver Creek. Mrs. Blackwood, I hope you don't think I came back here with any agenda regarding your family. Oh, darling, I don't care what agenda you had when you came back. What matters is what's happening now and what needs to happen going forward. Her voice softened slightly. You and Xenois have history. Good history. You were happy together once, weren't you? We were young. You were compatible. You understood each other. You brought out the best in each other. She paused meaningfully, unlike certain marriages that seem to bring out the worst in everyone involved. I closed my eyes, hardly daring to believe this was happening. Sylvia Blackwood, the matriarch of the most powerful family in Silver Creek, was essentially offering to help me destroy her son's marriage and claim his family for my own. Saturday at 6, I said finally. Riley and I will be there. Wonderful. And Sophia? Come prepared to speak honestly about what you want for your future, for both your futures. I will. Oh, and one more thing. Might I have a word with young Riley? I'm so looking forward to meeting him properly. Panic flashed through me as I thought of Riley locked in the bathroom upstairs, probably still shivering from his punishment. Oh, I'm sorry, but he's fast asleep. It's been such an exhausting day for him, with everything that happened. He was completely worn out. Of course, poor little thing. Another time, then. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities to get acquainted this weekend. I'm sure we will. Until Saturday, then, dear. And Sophia, welcome home. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in amazement. In one phone call, Sylvia Blackwood had just handed me the key to everything I'd been working toward. She wanted Lumina gone as much as I did, maybe more. She was ready to embrace Riley as her grandson, to accept me back into the family fold. All I had to do was play my part on Saturday night, show up looking appropriately vulnerable but dignified, let Riley charm his way into everyone's hearts, and watch as the Blackwood matriarch systematically dismantled her daughter-in-law's position in the family. I took another sip of wine, savoring both the alcohol and the taste of impending victory. Poor Lumina had no idea what was coming for her. She thought burning my hand was some kind of power play, some way to mark her territory and warn me off. Instead, she'd just given me the perfect victim narrative and turned Xenois's own mother into my ally. I glanced at the stairs, knowing Riley was still locked in the bathroom where I'd left him. I should probably let him out soon, make sure he was presentable for Saturday's performance. After all, he was going to be the star of the show, the sweet, traumatized little boy who just wanted a stable family and a father figure. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Lumina fought desperately to protect her family from threats that didn't exist, the real threat was being invited to dinner by her own mother-in-law. Chapter 45, The Matriarch's Scheme. Sylvia. I set my phone down on the mahogany desk in my study. A satisfied smile could be found present on my face. That conversation had gone even better than I'd hoped. Sophia had sounded grateful and just vulnerable enough to make her sympathetic without seeming weak to anyone else. Perfect. That was quite the performance, Sylvia. My husband spoke, startling me a bit as I hadn't heard him walk inside the study. I turned to find my husband Samuel, who was standing in the doorway, his arms crossed and his expression was furrowed. He has a disapproving look on his face. How long has he been listening? Long enough, judging by the way he was looking at me and the way he sounded. I don't know what you mean, I said smoothly, moving to pour myself a brandy from the wine glass that was located on the bar table as I added with a nonchalant shrug of my shoulders. I was simply extending an invitation to an old family friend. An old family friend who just happened to be our son's former girlfriend, who just happened to return to town with her 5-year-old son Riley, and who just happened to have some sort of fight with our daughter-in-law today. Samuel said, as he entered the room fully, closing the door behind him. Don't insult my intelligence, Sylvia. I know exactly what you're doing. I took a sip of my brandy as I savored it for a while before swallowing it as I said, And what exactly am I doing, Samuel? You're meddling in things that don't concern you as usual. You're trying to break up Xenois's marriage because you've never liked Lumina, and now you see an opportunity to get rid of her and give Xenois who you think is worthy enough to be his mate. Can you blame me? The words came out harsher than I'd intended as I narrowed my eyes. Years of frustration coloring my tone as I added with clenched fists. That woman destroyed our family, Samuel. She killed our daughter. We don't know that. I know it, I yelled as I slammed my glass down on the desk, making the crystal echo loudly from the impact as I took heavy breath to steady myself before I added. I know it in my bones, in my soul. Our daughter is dead because of her, and now she's slowly poisoning our son's life, turning him into a shadow of the man he used to be. Samuel's expression softened slightly, the way it always did when I mentioned our lost daughter. Sylvia, I miss her too, every day, but destroying Xenois's marriage isn't going to bring her back. No, but it might save Olivero. I moved to the window, looking out at the gardens where I'd once watched my family play together, before my daughter's death had torn everything apart. Have you seen how that boy has been lately? How withdrawn he's become. How he flinches whenever his mother raises her voice. I asked quietly as Samuel sighed heavily before he replied. Children go through phases. This isn't a phase, I yelled, whirling around to face him as I added angrily. This is a child living in fear of the woman who's supposed to protect him, the same woman who just attacked another innocent woman in broad daylight out of sheer pettiness and jealousy. Samuel sighed, rubbing his temples as if he was trying to get rid of an incoming headache as he continued speaking. What happened in that kitchen today was wrong. I'll grant you that. But it doesn't justify what you're planning. What I'm planning is giving our son a chance at happiness. Real happiness, not the sham of a marriage he's trapped in now. By manipulating him behind his back, by orchestrating situations to make his wife look bad, by showing him what he could have instead if he had just sent Lumina away after she had given birth to Olivero. That was all we needed her for, to give Xenois an heir. I moved closer to my husband, trying to make him understand from my point of view. You should have heard Sophia on the phone, Samuel. The pain in her voice when she talked about raising her son alone, the shocked gratitude she had when I offered her some kindness like any sensible woman would do. That's a woman who would appreciate what Xenois has to offer. And Lumina doesn't? Lumina takes everything for granted. She always has. She married our son for his title, his status, not because she loved him. She's never appreciated the life he's given her, the family he's provided. Samuel shook his head. You're seeing what you want to see, Sylvia. Xenois chose Lumina despite everything, despite the fact it was arranged. They are true mates as well. He bonded with her. He loves her. Does he? Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like he's been questioning that bond for months now, especially since Sophia came back. My husband was quiet for a long moment, studying my face as he shook his head, stepping aside as he said gently, Even if that's true, it's not our place to interfere. We should let them work it out themselves. Like we let our daughter work things out herself? The words hung between us like a wound that kept on festering and refused to heal. How did that turn out, Samuel? His face went pale, and I immediately regretted the low blow that I had used on my mate. He didn't deserve it at all. But I couldn't take it back now, couldn't unsay what we both knew was true, that our failure to intervene in the situation had cost us our daughter. That's not fair, he said quietly. Life isn't fair. Our daughter is dead, and the woman responsible is living in our son's house, raising our grandson. If that's not unfair, I don't know what is.